Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Background. About 20 years ago, I worked for a company that made software for banks and credit unions. Two smaller regional banks merged and we were called in to upgrade all the branches for the same version of software and to point the network to the new consolidated bank. This happens after hours so as to not interfere with day-to-day operations. The whole process took several hours on site at each branch, so we were sure we would have plenty of time to roll things back if anything went wrong. We started a few hours before the bank closed. This will give us time to fix anything before the bank opened the next day. The process started with a meeting to go over the plan for the branch so the bank staff, some of whom will be helping with the process because my team doesn't have complete access to the bank system. This is a small bank. There's 4 offices, a conference room, and space for like 5 tellers up front. It turned out it was payday for some large employer or something. But just as I started my meeting with the branch manager, the 2 staff members from my company, and the 2 bank employees who will be opening the bank the following day, the bank started to get really busy. The meeting lasts about 30 minutes and all the while the line and waiting area is filling up, so I rush through the details for the bank manager and release him. Then the 2 opening staff. I leave the details for my team for last. My team knew the process. They just needed to know what computer to start on first. Anyway, I dismissed the bank staff and they went to help the rush up front, and I continued my meeting with my team. Then sent them out to get some food since it looks like the bank might not close on time anyway. I head over to the bank manager's office and immediately a woman ducks under the rope line and makes it straight through the office and she tries to follow me inside. I didn't see her step out of line, so I at first thought maybe she was a bank employee. As soon as I turned around, she said something like, "It's about time. I've been waiting for half an hour." This was nonsense because we started the meeting at 4:30 and it wasn't even 5 yet. I tried to tell her she was mistaken. I don't work at the bank, but she cut me off, not even paying attention to what I'm saying. She plopped herself down in one of the chairs and said, "I need to make a withdrawal." I replied, "Sorry, I can't help you with that. You'll need to wait in line." "No, I've already waited for an hour. I know you can do it. You've done it before." She slaps her ID and bank card on a desk and says, "Just open the drawer and give me $2,000. "I can't. I don't." I couldn't even finish explaining that I don't work there. "Nonsense. You've done it before. Give me $2,000. "Well, I can't." "That's it." At this point, she's raised her voice and is now standing. I assumed she was going to leave and I went to open the door, but she pushed me back and yelled, "I'm not leaving this office until you give me $2,000. She then picked up a screwdriver out of a toolkit sitting on my desk and she started prying at the desk drawer. I push her back and she swings at me with a screwdriver. I step back, but she scratches my arm, tearing my shirt, and goes back to prying at the drawer. I've had it at this point. I'm thinking she's nuts and I need to do something. I look at the office and it looks like everyone is busy and think maybe just they didn't notice her yelling. It looks like she's not making any progress on a desk. It's too sturdy. I try a calmer approach and try to get her attention, but she stops for a moment and looks at me like she forgot I was there. "Are you going to get me my money or what?" She snapped. "I am not an employee of the bank." "Nonsense, you were just in a meeting with the other employees." "Yes, but..." "Then give me my money or get out of my way." She interrupted before pushing me again. I finally had it. I looked at the window and it seemed like all the bank employees were calm and quiet. I thought I'll be damned if I'm just going to stand here and watch her rob the bank. She was a big woman, but I played hockey against bigger people, so even if she had a few pounds on me, I was pretty sure I could at least slow her down. I took a step back, brought my shoulder down, then with a step and a short lunge, I kicked her into the brick wall behind her. She smacked her head on the wall and gave a short thwomp as I knocked the wind out of her, and then she collapsed to the floor unconscious. I watched her suspiciously for a moment, thinking that was easier than I thought. Why didn't I do that earlier? Then I thought maybe I hurt her, so I knelt down to check on her. She was breathing. I shouldn't move her. The screwdriver flew across the office, so I just stepped over her and walked out into the bank. About that time I heard sirens, lots of them, and a short while later, some police came into the bank. Having just assaulted a woman, leaving her unconscious, I put my hands up. The police walked over, looked at me, then walked into the office. I turned around and the bank staff were pointing at the office where I just left. Evidently, they triggered a silent alarm as soon as she yelled at me to give her money. They moved the other customers to the conference room and were following protocols to comply and not interfere. The end result was she woke up to being handcuffed. She was seen by an EMT briefly before being arrested for armed robbery, kidnapping, and assault. The screwdriver from the toolkit was taken as evidence and we teased my tech for the next few years. You get your screwdriver back yet? She came in for $2,000 and left with $510. She spent 4 years in prison and, as an assault victim in that state, they notified me when she got out. Hey everyone, I'll keep this short and to the point. You don't need a full description of my job because it's complicated, so just know that I need to dress formally and be professional at all times. For that reason, I always get my clothes tailored so I can look put together, especially since my field is dominated by men. So I need to look presentable to be taken seriously. Anyways, to the main event. I was at the tailor shop I always frequent, waiting for my appointment. I had just left work and was in a full suit, so I looked nothing like people who worked at the shop, who wore a dress shirt and pants with a tie that had the shop's logo. As I was sitting, checking a PowerPoint presentation on my iPad, I heard, "Excuse me." I looked at the woman who just entered the shop and she didn't look like your typical Karen. She was young, in her 20s, with blonde hair, blue eyes. I was dressed pretty nicely. I responded to her, "Are you talking to me?" "Yes, I want to start my appointment right now. I can't wait. Come on, make it work." I gave her a genuinely confused look and said, "I don't work here. I'm waiting for my appointment as well. I don't care if it's your day off. I need this dress altered because I have a wedding tomorrow." "Well, I can't help you. Look for an employee." "Okay, I'll look for an employee." "Alright, in fact, I am getting the manager." She starts screaming for the manager at the top of her lungs. The receptionist came back from I don't know where and quickly tried to contain the woman and get her to lower her voice, but she was having none of it. I kinda excluded myself from the scene by staying quiet and looking at my phone because I had a long day at work and just couldn't be bothered by a dumb brat like her. I saw the client before me leave and started to move to go into the office where my usual tailor works. And that's when that witch went full-on Karen and lunged for me and a bag in my hand. Before me or the employees could stop her, she took out my $1,000 blouse and ripped it apart with all her might. She raised her hand to slap me, but I have cat-like reflexes and stopped her hand mid-air and pulled her hair to make her drop my things. She kept screaming that I assaulted her, and that's when the manager showed up. I learned later on that the receptionist already paged the manager to get security. Two big men appeared with the manager who apologized and asked me if I wanted to call the police and get my justice. And I agreed, and the officers arrived in about 15 minutes. The young Karen got charged for attempted theft, assault, and ended up compensating me for my blouse. The manager also offered to get my new blouse altered for free. All in all, it was a happy ending for me. My first bit of revenge, which was likely the worst revenge I've ever committed, occurred when I was 14 years old. To understand what happened, I'll start by saying that I was severely bullied back then. It was the 90s and bullying wasn't given the attention it is given these days. I was probably the easiest target in a school. A young girl who didn't like to talk, was 5 feet tall, 152 centimeters, weighed only 68 pounds, 30.8 kilograms, and had big glasses. Adding to the problem was that I had Asperger's syndrome, which was considered to be on the autism spectrum back then, and I probably only would have attracted more bullies if I carried around a neon sign. My parents knew I was having issues and allowed me to study martial arts, but told me consistently not to fight, to try to get along and so on. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. My grandfather, on the other hand, pushed for me to do something much different and gave me a piece of advice that I have carried with me. Do not start the fight, just finish it. Being the typical good girl back then, I tried to follow the rules that my parents set out. The ones that the teachers attempted to enforce, but the bullying never ceases. My pencils were smashed and I was poked with the sharp pieces. My lunches were stolen and eaten in front of me. My books, both textbooks and recreational, were taken and ripped up in front of me. There was even an incident when my shoes were stolen and tossed into a pond that I knew had alligators in it, meaning that I walked home without shoes. This continued from elementary school into middle school and finally high school. My few friends were good people who tried to help me but were often targeted as well. Some of them ended up being transferred to other school when things got too rough. At 14, I will admit that I was numb and no longer reacted the same way to the shoving or harassment. The teachers were less than helpful, never leaving their classrooms and thus never seeing what happened in halls. On one particular day, while attempting to put some of my books into the locker, one of the bullies decided to have some fun and see if I was really small enough to fit in a locker. He came up behind me and started shoving, then attempting to fold me into the locker. One of my friends came up and yelled, trying to make him stop, only for him to push her away, causing her to fall. When I managed to turn around, he had grabbed her and tried to slap her. Something inside of me snapped at that moment. I didn't care about being bruised or hurt, I was just angry. Angry to the point that my numbness was overridden at that moment. I wish I could have seen the surprise on his face when I delivered my first non-sanctioned kick to his side. But he was facing away from me and fell to the side of my friend. Coughed as he turned to face me right as my hand grabbed his shirt and my other hand slammed into his nose, breaking it. I was enraged, but the pleasure I felt in that moment when I heard them give a sob of pain caused me to continue to punch the piece of trash. Though I remembered those first two hits perfectly, the ones that followed were mostly lost on me. I didn't aim to do anything other than hurt this person. The boy was double my size but had never expected a tiny girl to fight him, especially since she never had before. I was told later he attempted to fight back, but I was little more than an enraged animal that turned into a violent berserker when he did land a blow. The high school we were at was a multi-level school and our fight took us near a stairwell. My mind cleared in that second, but the anger was still there as I came to a decision. I was going to kill this jerk. On his next attempt to punch me, I moved in sharply and drove my elbow into his side, knocking at his press, then shoved him hard. My anger broke as he began to fall, and I can honestly say that I was afraid as he went rolling down the stairs, knocking into a few people on the way down. The bully wasn't dead at the end of all of this, but he did have a broken nose, a broken collarbone, and a broken arm from his fall down the stairs. I had a number of bruises and a bloody nose as well, though it wasn't broken. My friend did manage to explain what happened, which prevented me from being expelled. I was suspended instead. The bully was also given a suspension and a free ride to the hospital. My parents were livid at what I'd done and grounded me for an indefinite amount of time, turned into 3 months. My grandfather, on the other hand, pulled me aside and told me, only way to make a brat like that stop is to make the consequence bad enough for him to toe the line. He ain't gonna bother you again. When we were allowed to return to school, the bully's broken arm and collarbone caused him to need not only a cast but a sling as well. His nose was still large and discolored, causing him to look like a panda or a raccoon. He never bothered me again during the rest of high school, and a lot of bullying died down around then. I decided to get a therapist after 3 years without one. I found him on a list of insurance-approved psychologists. I got this list directly from my insurance provider, and they clearly stated my appointments will be completely covered other than a $10 fee. Okay, sounds great. I should also mention these are done online through a service just like Zoom. I cannot join the session until he starts it. The first 2 sessions were good. I really liked him and thought he understood me well. I submitted all of my paperwork to his secretary who handled billing, and she got all my insurance information and informed me that I was all good to go. For the session that happened last week, he joined the session 30 minutes late with no apology at all. My sessions are supposed to be 60 minutes, and I expected my session to be 47 minutes long, then as I didn't expect him to make the next client late. However, he hit me with the "okay, well, let's wrap up and schedule your next appointment." After we've been on the call for 35 minutes. I didn't really say anything as he abruptly left. This made me upset because I'm supposed to get an hour and he dipped in late and dipped out early. The next day, I received a bill in the mail for $350 and it said that I owed them back because no insurance information was provided. I called his secretary and she said she misplaced my paperwork and I had sent her an email. How do you misplace an email? I told her I would most definitely not be paying a cent other than my copay that I had already paid. She tried to argue with me and say that it wasn't her fault, and I told her that if she can't even keep track of confidential information such as a patient's insurance information, that was a major problem. She assured me she would fix it and I told her to please take care of it. I didn't snap, I didn't yell. She called me back giving me all kinds of excuses, saying it was a mistake, okay, fine, whatever, mistakes happen and all that. But then she said I still needed to pay the bill and couldn't tell me why. She asked me if I wanted to schedule an appointment and I told her that I would call back later. I didn't, and instead I went on his reviews page and gave him 2 stars with a simple explanation of "came in late, left early with no explanation, reception lost insurance information and wants me to pay in full." I didn't put feelings or bias into it. That is strictly what happened. Well, he called me a few hours later with an attitude asking me why I didn't just address my concerns with him. I told him if he had a genuine excuse for coming late and leaving early, he would have either cancelled my appointment or at least apologized and said something. He wants a chance to fix the mistakes if I take down a review, but I told him no thank you. Am I the jerk? And now with some comments on a post. Someone saying you're not the jerk, and the insurance bit almost sounds like it could be a scam. If you don't pay, just make sure you actually write a formal letter to your insurance company disputing the claim. Attach the email with a timestamp as well as that list your insurance provider gave you indicating he accepts your plan. Another commenter adds, not the jerk. Also, it seems he's more concerned with a bad review than his poor service. But give it a second thought and see if you can give him a second chance if you feel like he can fix this, because after all, no service is perfect and mistakes are bound to happen sometimes. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding, maybe give it a try. A third commenter goes with, not the jerk. He was very unprofessional, the receptionist misplacing paperwork was just a cherry on the cake. I do agree that you probably should have spoken to him first regarding the charges, but given his attitude and rudeness, I would have been just as frustrated and angry. As for the receptionist insisting you pay the bill without saying why, well, that's pretty shady.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.